Good morning and welcome to your Farm and Home Show. I'm Kristi Shive, and this morning we're visiting with Jennifer Bridge. She's County Extension Agent for Family and Consumer Sciences in Meade County. And today we are talking about yeast breads for the holidays. They make great gifts, but there is a science behind yeast, and you are here to educate us. Jennifer, what is yeast and how does it impact baking?
Well, yeast is a single cell microorganism. It's active, but it's not really doing anything till you actually give it this perfect environment and feed it. So, it usually comes in little granules. You can buy it in a jar. You can buy it in single packets. A lot of people like to do the packets. That way they just open what they need. Usually there's about 2 teaspoons of granulated yeast in the packet. So, it's whatever the consumer prefers. But yeast is kind of touchy. It likes this perfect environment. So to activate it, you're going to put it in liquid between 100 degrees and 110. If it's less than 100, it just doesn't wake up. And if it's over 110, you can kill it. So because it is a living organism. So when I bake with yeast, I always let that dissolve, usually around 5 minutes, and I'll watch for it to start kind of bubbling up, and then I know it's active and ready to be fed. And then I'm going to add it to my ingredients. So flour primarily. Flour has natural sugar that yeast loves. It's called maltose, but I also add some granulated sugar, and that feeds it. And then it produces carbon monoxide, which causes it to rise. And there's several different things that go on with yeast in cooking.
Jennifer, what is the difference between yeast breads and quick breads?
A yeast bread uses yeast as the main leavening agent. So it's going to make it rise. All that carbon dioxide is going to make those gases are going to make it rise. A quick bread uses either what we call a double acting baking powder, which would be, and I always tell them the first action comes when you add the liquid, and the second action comes when you add the heat. So it rises quickly. So you're not having to wait on those gases to release when you're using baking powder or baking soda.
I'm glad you mentioned heat, Jennifer. How does temperature impact both yeast and the baking product?
If it's too low a temperature, it's just gonna take forever to bake.
Mm.
If it's too high temperature, then the outside gets done a lot quicker than the inside. So you just want to set it at the temperature that's mentioned in the recipe. Normally it's 350 degrees. Sometimes with yeast breads, it's 400 degrees. So just look at the recipe on it. And I always tell consumers you follow that recipe to make sure that because it's usually specific. When I'm making soup or something, I can just add and take away and do whatever. Baking's more of a science. So you have to be a little bit more attentive to that. Yeast continues to rise even when you put it to the oven for heat. Near the end of that baking process, that yeast dies. And that's what stops that rising.
Jennifer, how do we know which type of flour to use when baking with yeast?
Flour is a raw ingredient, and that's what we try to tell consumers. It's raw. Don't eat it raw. Don't eat your cookie dough raw. People think it's eggs. It's not just eggs. It's also that flour. Flour has proteins in it. If you're baking bread, I always recommend a bread flour because bread flour has a higher protein level in it. So the gluten is going to form stronger and quicker. And the gluten's what kind of holds it together, makes it elastic. So bread flour has between 12 and 14% protein in it. Whereas all-purpose is between 9 and 12. So you can use all-purpose, but it's not the same product. It goes on down. Cake flour has the least amount of protein in it. It's usually 6 to 8%. The only thing I would say is, don't be afraid to bake. It's a great way to save money. It's a great way to build memories, get the kids involved, nieces, nephew, whoever, get them involved. That way you can enjoy the holidays and not stress out too much and save a little money by baking on your own.
Makes a great gift, especially around the holidays, but anytime. For more information, be sure to contact your local extension office. Thanks for joining us today on the Farm and Home Show, and we'll see you next time.